Thank you, Professor Grippi, for your kind words. I'm very pleased to come back to this forum. You know, to be frank with you, I flew in yesterday from China. In China, we're still celebrating the 60th anniversary of PRC, and this National Day coincides with China's traditional festival, Moon Festival. People were so happy. You talk to the Chinese, they look at the past, they are very upbeat. In 60 years, we achieved a lot. Looking down the road, and the Chinese are full of confidence. We believe tomorrow is better. Having come here, listen to different statements, I think there's a strong contrast between mood in East Asia and the mood in Europe. Over there, the people are quite optimistic about the future. But in Europe, it's not necessarily, the case. So I like to make 3 points. Because 20 years after the fall of the wall, it's a good time for reflection and stock taking. World is getting better or getting worse. The world has moved forward or backward. To answer these critical questions, we need to understand the changes which are occurring in the world today. How we, Chinese, we look at the changes which are occurring in the world. I believe there are 3 major changes. One, the center of the gravity of international relations is shifting from Atlantic to Pacific. This is maybe the most important change in the past 4 centuries. What drives this shifting is the rise of Asia. Yes, after the Second World War, Asia started her rise. Japan was first to rise. Then in the 1960s, Japan was joined by 4 tigers. Then early 1970s, some ASEAN countries, such as Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, they joined this rising tide. 1978, we start a new policy orientation, what we call reform and opening up to the outside world. We joined this tide. 1991, India started economic reform. India joined in. Rising Asia. This, I think, is a new trend, to my understanding, that will change the face of the world in the 21st century. This is a very important change. Second change which is occurring in the world, I believe the world has never been as united, as interdependent as today. There are 2 powerful factors which are behind this phenomenon. First is interdependence. Take the relations between China and the US as an example. 30 years ago, whatever happened to US economy that had no impact at all on China, today is quite different. When US is in trouble, we are in trouble. So same thing is true with China. You know, 1971, I went to the US for the first time as a junior diplomat of the Chinese delegation to go to the UN. 1971, you see, after the UN session, I stayed, on the transmission to the United Nations. I went to US supermarket. Nothing was made in China. I just come back from US. I have so many American friends who told me this. Ambassador Wu, it's difficult to find a gift for you which is not made in China. Yeah, this is such an interdependence. No one could foresee it 30 years ago. Another powerful factor which is behind this trend is, common challenges. Today, we are facing daunting challenges: climate change, terrorism, environmental degradation, drug trafficking, etc., etc. No country in the world, no matter how powerful it is able to meet these challenges alone. This is the second change which is occurring in the world. The third change, to my understanding, is the world is on the eve of 3 revolutions. 1, energy. 2, industrial. 3, way of life. What drives these 3 revolutions is, 1, a great number of developing countries are rising. Yes, Asia is rising. Africa, some countries are also rising. Same thing is true with Latin America. If you add up the population of these countries, 3.3 billion people. Never in the history of mankind, half of the global population is rising. With such a number of developing countries rising, the problem of resources, energy, it's a problem. Because development model we are seeing today is invented by the industrialized countries. When West countries started the rise, they had at their disposal global resources. They had no worry. But today, with 3.3 billion people rising, we don't have sufficient resources. This is a problem. A second factor behind these 3 revolutions is climate change. Climate is changing very fast. We are all affected by this change, because in the atmosphere there are too much CO2, too much green gas. This is a problem. So we have to meet this challenge. So then, when energy changes, that will bring about new industrial revolution. The way of life has to be changed too, because the way of life we are seeing today is invented by the West. With the 3.3 billion people rising, that kind of way of life is not sustainable. We got to change. These are 3 major changes. As far as China is concerned, we are seeing these changes.